Have you ever taken a personality test, read your horoscope, or received a fortune cookie message that felt eerily accurate? That moment when you think, "This describes me perfectly," might not be because the assessment is truly insightful, but because of a fascinating psychological phenomenon called the Barnum Effect. Named after the famous showman P.T. Barnum, this cognitive bias explains why vague, general statements can feel personally tailored, and why we should be cautious about the personality assessments we put our faith in. In 1948, psychologist Bertram Forer conducted a revealing experiment. He gave his students a personality test, then provided each student with what they believed was a personalized analysis based on their answers. The students rated the accuracy of their analysis at an impressive 4.26 out of 5. The catch? Every student received exactly the same analysis. A collection of vague, generally positive statements Forer had compiled from horoscopes. This experiment revealed what we now call the Barnum Effect, or Forer Effect. Our tendency to accept general, universally applicable statements as uniquely descriptive of ourselves. This psychological blind spot affects how we interpret everything from personality tests and horoscopes to psychic readings and AI-generated insights. Today, we'll explore how it works, why we fall for it, and how to become more discerning consumers of personality assessments. What makes the Barnum Effect so powerful? Several psychological mechanisms work together. First, confirmation bias leads us to notice and remember the parts of a description that fit us while overlooking the parts that don't. When reading a horoscope that says you're both outgoing in social situations and sometimes prefer quiet reflection, you'll likely focus on whichever trait feels more accurate and discount the other. Second, subjective validation causes us to consider information valid when it has personal meaning or significance to us. When a statement addresses our self-concept, we're more likely to accept it regardless of its actual accuracy. Third, our self-perception is inherently positive and ambiguous. Most people see themselves as above average in desirable traits, making positive, flattering statements seem especially accurate. Fourth, the Pollyanna principle. Our tendency to remember pleasant information more accurately than unpleasant information makes us more receptive to positive descriptions of ourselves than negative ones. These mechanisms create a perfect storm of psychological vulnerability when we encounter personality assessments. What makes a statement likely to trigger the Barnum Effect? Effective Barnum statements share several characteristics. They're vague and general enough to apply to most people. You have a tendency to be critical of yourself. They include contradictory aspects that cover multiple possibilities. You are generally outgoing, but sometimes reserved. They focus on common desires or concerns. You desire more appreciation from others. They're predominantly positive or frame weaknesses as hidden strengths. Your insecurity sometimes holds you back, but it also makes you more empathetic to others. They address universal experiences but frame them as unique insights. You've experienced disappointments in the past, but you've learned valuable lessons from them. They make claims about flexibility or adaptability. You can be extroverted when necessary, but you also value your alone time. They include escape clauses that explain exceptions. While you're usually confident, certain situations can make you feel insecure. These characteristics ensure that statements will resonate with almost anyone while creating the illusion of specificity. The Barnum Effect influences far more than just horoscopes and fortune cookies. In personality testing, even some popular assessments rely heavily on statements general enough to apply to most people, creating an illusion of insight. In marketing, brands use Barnum-style statements to make consumers feel understood. You appreciate quality, but also value a good deal. In political messaging, candidates often use vague, universally appealing statements that voters can interpret according to their own values. In self-help content, general advice is often framed as personalized insight. You have untapped potential that circumstances have prevented you from fully expressing. In AI-generated personality insights, algorithms can create Barnum-style statements based on minimal data, creating an impression of deep understanding. In psychic readings and mediumship, Practitioners often use cold reading techniques that rely heavily on the Barnum Effect to create the impression of supernatural insight. The digital age has only amplified this effect, with algorithms creating increasingly sophisticated Barnum-style content tailored to our digital footprints. Why should we care about the Barnum Effect? Uncritical acceptance of vague personality assessments carries several costs. It can lead to poor self-understanding when we accept generic descriptions rather than developing genuine self-awareness through reflection and feedback. It can result in misguided decisions when we make educational, career, or relationship choices based on inaccurate personality assessments. It makes us vulnerable to manipulation by those who use the effect deliberately to gain our trust, sell products, or promote ideologies. It can create artificial limitations when we internalize statements about our supposed traits or tendencies as fixed aspects of our identity. It diverts us from more evidence-based approaches to self-development that might actually help us grow and improve. Perhaps most importantly, it can prevent us from embracing the complexity and malleability of human personality, which is far more nuanced and changeable than most assessments suggest. Not all personality assessments are created equal. How can you distinguish more scientifically sound assessments from those that rely heavily on the Barnum Effect? Look for assessments with demonstrated reliability. They produce consistent results when taken multiple times. And validity. They measure what they claim to measure. Be wary of assessments that provide only positive or flattering feedback. Quality assessments acknowledge genuine limitations and challenges. Check whether the assessment makes specific, falsifiable claims rather than vague, universally applicable statements. Consider whether the assessment acknowledges contextual factors and the potential for change, rather than presenting traits as fixed and universal. Investigate whether the assessment was developed through rigorous research and testing rather than anecdotal evidence or intuition. Examine whether the assessment has predictive power for relevant outcomes rather than simply feeling accurate. Quality assessments will also be transparent about their limitations and appropriate uses, rather than claiming universal applicability. How can you protect yourself from the Barnum Effect when encountering personality assessments? First, practice the universal test. Ask yourself, would this description apply to most people? If so, it's likely triggering the Barnum Effect rather than providing unique insight. Second, seek specific rather than general feedback. Concrete examples and observable behaviors provide more valuable information than vague trait descriptions. Third, consider the source and methodology. Is the assessment based on scientific research or entertainment value? Understanding the development process helps evaluate credibility. Fourth, look for falsifiability. Quality insights make specific claims that could potentially be proven wrong, not just general statements that could apply to anyone. Fifth, seek external validation. Ask people who know you well whether the assessment results seem accurate rather than relying solely on your own perception. Finally, maintain healthy skepticism. Approach all personality assessments, even scientifically developed ones, as interesting perspectives rather than definitive truths about who you are. Understanding the Barnum Effect doesn't mean rejecting all personality assessments or self-reflection tools. Rather, it invites us to pursue deeper, more nuanced self-knowledge. Genuine self-understanding comes from multiple sources: thoughtful reflection, feedback from those who know us well, observation of our behaviors across different contexts, and yes, well-designed assessments used appropriately. The most valuable insights about ourselves are specific rather than general. Acknowledge both strengths and limitations, recognize our capacity for growth and change, and help us make better decisions rather than simply confirming what we already believe. By understanding the Barnum Effect, we can move beyond the comfortable illusion of insight provided by vague statements and pursue the more challenging but ultimately more rewarding path of genuine self-knowledge. Seeing ourselves not as we wish to be seen, but as we truly are, with all our complexity, contradictions, and potential for growth.